Welcome, everybody. My name is Julia Watson. And I am an author, a designer, and an educator. I co-founded the Lo-TEK Institute, and I co-direct the Lo-TEK Office for Intercultural Urbanism. We are a living studio co-led by Indigenous and non-Indigenous designers and scientists. And we are bringing ancestral, traditional, ecological knowledge systems to design, policy, product, and education. Today, I'm going to take you on a journey into the past so that we can together envision the future. At the dawn of modernism, Louis Sullivan said, "Form follows function." And this was absolutely revolutionary. It was a call to strip ornament and to design cities that mirrored the efficiency of machines. Cities were being reimagined as these engines of innovation. They were powered by coal and steel and this pure industrial ambition. And as these skyscrapers, they soared and the streets were cemented, progress raced forward on the underlying assumption that efficiency was the only measure of progress. So today, we can see that that experiment has failed. It gave us forms that functioned, but really rarely forms that actually thrived. Cities became these rigid, mechanical, and extraordinarily extractive. They exhausted their ecosystems, they displaced cultures, they buried their rivers and their wetlands. And what modernism gave us in this efficiency, it lost in life. Now, on this planet, in this incredible upheaval, we need a new edict. Form follows flux. Meaning, the forms that we actually design today, they must respond to and connect with this constant state of flow and transformation and change. Not these static, kind of fixed conditions. So this is an example of what I mean. This is the Yapese fish trap. It is located in Micronesia. These are these 200-meter-long stone-made fish traps that actually point out to sea, and they're so big you can see them from space by satellite. These work with tidal fluxes to sustainably catch fish that can then be really sustainably harvested. So the forms that we need today, they cannot be these static forms. They must be responsive. They must adapt. They must adapt with water. They must adapt with climate. They must adapt with culture. And they must adapt with the rhythm of life itself. Arthur C. Clarke's famous words, they remind us of life's true foundation. How inappropriate to call this planet Earth when it's quite clearly ocean. In many traditions, water is actually considered kin. It's considered an ancestor. It's considered a teacher. Water isn't this resource for us to just control. It's something to build a relationship with. Just as urbanism is not this separate thing, but it's actually something that needs to be woven into the nature of life itself. Cities, you might recognize this, they once co-evolved with water, like the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan, pictured here. This was a metropolis that housed 200,000 people with a tribute of 5 million people that was floating in harmony with the lakes that surrounded it. Its canals, its tanapas, they were living infrastructure. They were adaptable. They were productive. They were deeply, deeply connected with the life in the waters that surrounded them. And today, where this city once thrived before colonization, Mexico City sits. It sits beneath our feet. And we know the problems that are happening here. There is subsidence. The rivers, they're buried. And where water dies, it takes worlds with it. And when we talk about technology today, we often think about silicon chips or satellites, or most of us, it would be AI. But if we look back just a little bit further, sometimes hundreds, but we can even look back thousands of years, we can see another type of dominant technology. These are technologies that were developed by ancient cultures. They were designed not to control nature, but to co-create with it. Technologies that have endured because they are inherently resilient and they respond incredibly well to flux. These are hydrodynamic knowledge systems. They resist extinction. They still exist today, and they're powered sometimes by the celestial movements of the sun and the stars. Like you can see here, this is the Ramli sand agricultural islands by the Amasya in Tunisia. These gardens support incredibly lush agriculture in these really sandy and salty and pretty inhospitable environments. Or the infrastructure that is energized by the solar rays that actually siphon salt in the Michike Agor in Goa. These are these pans that expand along the foreshore, and they produce this incredible, coveted wild salt, but in the monsoon season they fill up. They become these spongy marshes, and what these marshes do is they protect all the cities that are behind them. In South Asia, these are the Baira floating islands. These are made from invasive water hyacinth that are constructed to make these floating agricultural islands, about 1.5 to 3 meters wide, but sometimes 200 meters long, that float around. And in the monsoon, they're raised and they float around and they enable people to grow their agriculture. But when the water subsides in the dry season, they actually go to rest on the earth. And in that resting moment, they draw up nutrients and they give nutrients back and they create this reciprocal condition with the land. So these are cyclical, these are adaptive systems. They sustain life. This cleans the rivers. It supports their native ecosystems. And then, from where I come from, the Pacific Northwest in the USA, these are the Swinomish people. What you're seeing here is a 4,000-year-old technology that was outlawed. Recently, they've been able to reconstruct what is called a clam gardening technology. These are walls 200 meters long that are actually built at the lowest tide line, and they're created to stop tidal events and the impact of storm events today. But traditionally, they've been created to support habitat for shellfish. And in that support of the habitat for shellfish, they also provide food for generations. So these aren't just ecological infrastructures, they are cultural ones. They are part of ceremony, they are part of reciprocity, they are part of sovereignty, they are part of stewardship, and they are incredibly dynamic coastal cultural resilient systems. Here in Mexico City, we stand on the lands where this wisdom was born, the Chinapas, first designed by the Nahua and later expanded by the Aztecs. They're sophisticated raised fields built layer by layer with mud and reed and living willow trees. This was a technology of abundance, producing harvests up to 8 times a year in the soils that remained fertile for centuries when worked with the human hand. This is your history, and this is the foundation of your city. But the genius of the Chinapa was never just food. They purified water, they sheltered biodiversity, they cooled the city, they buffered from floods and droughts, and they created this amazing transportation network that often preceded and was faster than roads. This was not infrastructure versus ecology. These were both the same thing at once, woven together. Imagine your city centuries ago functioning as this living, breathing organism, sustained by the water. And the most powerful part, this system, as you know, it still exists. It's alive here in Xochimilco. Chinapas continue to feed your city, filter your water, and remind us that regenerative design is still in existence. They actually also cleanse about 1/3 of the city's water. It's a multifunctional service that doesn't have any industrial waste, and it functions way better than a wastewater treatment plant can, and more elegantly. So when we talk about the future of Mexico City, facing heat, floods, droughts, sinkholes, and water scarcity, The answer is not always and only in these new technologies. It is remembering what was created here before, centuries ago. And this is not nostalgia. This is a blueprint for your city's resilience. So the deeper truth is this. What we know as maybe the greatest loss of the 21st century, mass extinction, we know this is happening on a scale that has never, ever been seen before. But I actually think the greatest loss will be the loss of these ancestral technologies. The loss of humanity's oldest climate adaptations that support all of the global biodiversity. That's what's vanishing. They are uniquely evolved in place to respond to your incredible cities and your environments. They are tested already against floods, droughts, fire, water scarcity, food scarcity, extreme weather events. Their unspoken disappearance and the knowledge of how to design in reverence with resilience, that is going to be the 21st century's greatest loss. So the latest book in the Low-Tech series is titled Water, a Field Guide to Technology. And what it is, it's a field guide to your urban futures. It's shaped by ancestral hydrology. It gathers lessons from floating farms, agriculture systems, terraced rivers, agricultural islands, not as these artifacts of the past, but as these blueprints for the future. Because water, it's not just a resource. It's a teacher, it can be a designer, and it's an intelligence that we have just ignored for way too long. The basis of all this is traditional ecological knowledge, which shows us that actually urban design doesn't have to impose itself on nature. Humankind is actually a gift to nature, and we can create incredible abundance. So unlike the modernist form follows function, which shapes cities around this idea of efficiency and universality, technological urbanism, it operates on this different principle. Form follows flux. Design emerges from the living rhythms of water, land, and culture. It is not from predetermined algorithms. It is co-created with ancestral knowledge systems where reciprocity replaces extraction, and water's intelligence, its cycles, its flows, and its seasonal pulses, they become the foundation of urban life. So the guiding principles, they're actually really simple, but they're really transformational. I'm going to run through just 5 of them. Water must be the foundation of cities that respond to their watersheds, their rivers, their wetlands, and their tides. Reciprocity in governance is really a foundation and essential. So local stewardship and local decision-making. Living systems must come first before concrete and steel. We must design with all life. That means humans, that means animals, and plants. And cities must follow these regenerative cycles. That means waste, water, materials. And this is not nostalgia. This is already happening. So this is Aotearoa in New Zealand. And what you're seeing is the Maori-led Wanganui River settlement. What they did is they granted legal personhood to the river itself, and they affirmed what the Maori have always known and told us, that water is alive, it has rights, and it has agency. So urban planning in this context, it actually begins with kinship. In Vancouver, Canada, the Senaqua, their development that is led by the Squamish Nation, it embeds Indigenous sovereignty into a dense, one of the most dense climate-forward projects and urban communities. And here we see urban growth. It's not this rupture in tradition, but it becomes this continuation of it. So these are just glimpses of technological urbanism. Cities not imposed on their landscapes, but composed in concert with them. Cities that remember that what water has always known. These are examples that aren't just lessons, they're actually a call to action for each and every one of us as designers. So where form follows flux, we can see that cities are already being designed as not as machines, but as these really living, breathing systems that flow with their culture, with their climate, and with their water. Like the Sanya mangrove parks by Turenscape and Kongjianyu. Cities that move, that breathe, that respond, rather than resist this world that is already rapidly changing around them. So what if cities could remember? What if cities could remember those uniquely dynamic forces, their waters, their seasonal pulses of their lands, and the stories and the knowledge that is already embedded in the people who have lived here before? What if the next century of design is not about conquering or controlling nature? What if it's about partnering with it and listening to it and learning from it? So this is the Thammasat University rooftop gardens. It's a series of rice terraces that cover this incredible rooftop. It is designed by Land Process. It's imitating the rice terraces that you find in the surrounding landscape in Thailand. So imagine designing with ancestral memory, the memory of water, the memory of the land, and the memory of the people and the wisdom of the generations that have come before you. So this is not fanciful. These tools exist. The wisdom is alive. And indigenous knowledge, regenerative design, ecological science, it is all here. And if we truly listen to water, to its memory, to its intelligence, and to its dire warnings, we can co-create cities that do more than just function. We can co-create cities that thrive with life and that remind us of our place in coexistence with the planet. So in my work, I describe a vision where design doesn't follow function, but flux, constant transformation, reciprocity, and change. This is called technological urbanism. It's a vision where indigenous knowledge is not a relic of the past, but a living innovation that can guide cities, it can guide communities towards incredibly regenerative and resilient futures. And across the world, this is already happening. So I want to ask you a question, and I'll finish with this. As designers, and as policymakers, and as educators, as planetary citizens, which we all are, how is your city going to remember? Thank you.